And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to yet another powerful episode of Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co host, that would be Stephen the Medium, who I thought was here, but I'm not quite sure whether he is or he isn't.
Well, I was answering. Esteban is here. I
What
just muted
happened?
myself by accident.
Oh
I'm
my
here.
God. I can't even trust you to just do not touch the mute button when we go live. And of
Well, listen.
course
When I hear
you
you
do.
saying I don't, he's supposed to be here. I kind of figured.
Oh
Yes. So
God.
I'm
And
here.
and it,
Stephen Frederick is here.
that's right. So Stephen the medium, Stephen my husband, Stephen the attorney, he's in the house. And Stephen, today we are having another powerful episode. Today we're going to talk about unspoken conversations, the kind of conversations that you're afraid to talk about. And we're going to dive into something that we all experience. But to be honest with you, Stephen, we rarely talk about it. Those conversations that we're afraid to have, the ones that, we hold back to avoid conflicts, to keep the peace, because we're afraid of what might happen if we tell the truth. So we'll leave that for later on, but I thought I'd let our viewers know that this is a powerful conversation, and it is a conversation that applies to all of us. So if you are sitting at home listening to this and you know there is that one conversation that you should be having, that you need to have, but you've been avoiding to have, this is the show that you want to listen to. So, but before we get to that, Stephen, we need to talk about what's going on with you, with us. We have visitors, so you wanna tell people what's going on. Hopefully, they're listening. This is gonna be a test. If they're not listening to this show, there's gonna be big issues.
Well,
So,
remember too. They're out and about. So if they're just in their MP town, so if they're walking around, I'm not sure they're going to be able to be listening. So just saying.
please, you can walk around with your phone in your ear and listen. I'm
Well,
not giving any passes. Those are the
well, listen.
Canadians. So you want to tell people, what's going
Yes,
on.
yes, I do.
Yes.
So first of all, happy August 1st. That's what I got to start with. So I can already, August 1st comes and I can just feel a stored away downstairs in our storage. As someone said, I think you have a storage area you don't tell us about, but in the storage area are all the Halloween decorations, and I can just tell the witches are just starting to sort of stretch, like, oh, August 1st, it's coming, it's just coming. So, and then today I saw a back to school
Hold
episode.
on, Stephen. Hold on, because those listening, perhaps if you're listening for the first time, you will have to follow us because October and Halloween is an event in this house. Stephen is not talking about a couple of witches. We're talking hundreds of Halloween witches. We're talking
Yes, we are.
about five, maybe six. What do you call those storage
Those
containers?
big plastic
Yeah,
bins, the big
big,
ones, like the
the big
jumbo.
ones. Yes. So that's what he's
Yes,
talking about. So,
yes.
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Gaha.
Keep
So
going.
it's coming, right? I get very
Yes.
excited, and then I saw a back to school commercial. So if you can not already tell, I am a fall winter guy. I am getting very excited, really excited. So, but a big news too is we have two guests that have been staying with us. They came here Wednesday, and big shout out to Phyllis and Priscilla, who are Canadians. They're sisters, and they're here with us. So we've been just having a great time. We had the best time last night. We went to a restaurant here in Mass in Plymouth, and after we ate, which was a big shout out to this restaurant, it was amazing. But then we also went to see this show, which is the Magic in Moonlight tour, which is it's put on by Postmodern Jukebox, and it is a show that incorporates like the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and that's where they come from. That's how they sing. Those are sort of the clothes. It was amazing. And one thing that surprised all of us, I think, Elix, was the I think his name was Nathaniel, was a tap dancing guy. That was amazing.
It was. Actually, the whole thing surprised me because Steven just said, I'm taking you to something, and I had no idea what that something was. No idea. So, we got to the venue. It was actually a pretty awesome venue in Plymouth. It was packed, but I had no idea. And like I said to Steven, now, don't take this wrong, people, because I know when we talk about the Lawrence Welk, people like roll their eyes. But Steven and I sort of enjoy watching that Lawrence Welk show. I thought that the show that we saw last night was sort of like model. It's the modern Lawrence Welk, if you will. That's why they had the tap dancing. One thing I appreciated is all the people in the show, Steven, were like multi-talented. They played, they sang, they danced, and it was pretty awesome. I enjoyed it to the max.
Well, I don't really know where you're getting people roll their eyes about Lawrence Welk, because
yes, they do. Because
I don't sort of like watching it. We both really love watching it. That's the ritual Sunday night. We used to do it with your mama, and now we still do it because on Rhode Island PBS, it comes on every week, and we record it, and it's really just, it sets you back to old school, and I generally watch it with my Lawrence Welk throw.
And just like I was saying, it's a little creepy, especially when he puts the throw, and the TV. No, listen, I mean, it's entertaining, but you can't listen. The truth is the truth. There is something a little oddish
Weird
about
it.
Yes.
Well, let me just make sure people know that when I'm not kidding about the Lawrence Welk throw. So Elix's cousin Ava Milagros, who we love, shout out to Ava. She had been here when she was with us and visiting. So the four of us on Sunday night, me, Elix, Ava, and Consuelo would go down to Consuelo's apartment and watch Lawrence Welk. Right? Consuelo loved it, and it was a great time. So Ava got to know it and like Lawrence Welk. So she is in Pennsylvania, I think with friends or something, and she sees in this house that there is a throw, and it's Lawrence Welk. So she tells me, and I said, Ava, I don't care if you steal it. I don't care if you knock those people out. I just get me that Lawrence Welk throw. So she did. She didn't really knock anyone out, but she did ask them.
Of all people, Eva would not steal anything and would
That's
not,
true.
Knock anyone out. So she is goody two shoes. So she did get it for you.
Yeah, she asked them, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't care." They just gave it, and I love it. It's just part of the whole gig of watching Lawrence Welk. So it's good. It's good. But when they came out last night with the accordion, and that's such a big deal in Lawrence Welk, it was. I agree with you, Elix. It was a modern version of the Lawrence Welk show. But these people were.
But the drummer was so amazing.
And then the drummer is like
Yes.
this amazing drummer. He's doing like his thing, and then all of a sudden the spotlight goes on him. Like he puts his hat on, pulls the mic down, and starts singing the song. That his voice was incredible.
Yes. Yeah,
It was
awesome.
such a great experience. So if anyone ever sees it, because it goes around not only the country, the world, you should get tickets to go see it. It's a really, really fun night.
Yeah. And we had an amazing dinner. The Canadians who are visiting got tickets to the show, so they were able to join. But I also want to do a shout out to Anthony and Michelle, because we saw them at the restaurant, and they were gracious and kind enough to buy us a round of drinks and dessert.
That was the sweetest, unexpected thing ever. Seriously.
Yes.
It was, but that's them, right?
You can't expect anything better because that's who they are, So just
well, listen, can we also just talk about last weekend quickly? P-Town trip.
Oh my God, that's right. We didn't have a chance to tell people about P-Town was a trip.
I think every second in P-Town was just laughing. The six of us. That's all we did was laugh. And
well,
eat
I think
and
we
drink.
did more than laugh. We drank a lot. We ate a lot, and then we laugh, of course, because you know, we had so much fun with our friends John and Krista and Julie and Jake
Did you say
and
Julie?
Julia and Jake. And
Mm-hmm.
it
Let
was
Julia hear that.
Julio,
Yeah, Julio.
and Jake, and it was just an amazing. We got to go to Tea Dance. Uh, that was their very first time at Tea Dance in Provincetown. We got to have some amazing dinners. Sierra on Sales, of course, number one spot. We went to a drag show, and that was. I think John is still traumatized. Our friend John is still traumatized because one of the drag queens fell in love with him from the moment she started the show and set eyes on him. She was like all over him like white on rice.
She was very vocal. Let's just say that with
Yes,
John.
very, very
Just
bold.
saying.
And we did the Dunes tour with Dave, who is the longest employee there, right?
Yeah,
The longest
16
driver,
years, I think
16
he
years.
said.
And the tour was we've done the tour before, but oh my God, it's just so fascinating and so amazing. And we ended up going to the beach. I mean, it was just he checked all the boxes. It was amazing, an amazing weekend, Steven.
Yeah, a weekend that I didn't want to end.
Yes. And
Right?
Steven, so tell people because we're heading to our first break. Tell people what you're up to because I know you have a couple of events coming up.
Yes, so I have, and all of these events can be found, and you can buy tickets via stephenthemedium.com. August 6th, I am in Warwick. Is it August? No, I'm sorry. August 9th. August 9th, I'm in Warwick, Rhode Island at the Crown Plaza event. That is going to be an incredible event. So you should get tickets if you're local or around there. And then August 21st, I am in Wareham with another incredible medium, Scott Allen. The two of us are doing that event. And my other event, Dunn and Sons, is sold out. So, and there's other, there's just other services. If you go on Stephen the Medium, you can book an appointment yourself. You can book it in virtual, or you can book it in person in my office in New Bedford. So, stuff that's coming up is really, really exciting. But the August 9th one is really cool because it's not just me doing readings. It's also me allowing the audience to ask like Q&As to their loved ones in spirit. So how wild is that?
Never been done. So you have to go to that show. But anyway, Stephen, you know what else we have to do? We have to take our first commercial break. So when we come back, we are going to be talking about something we all deal with, but rarely talk about, the conversations that we're too afraid to have. And we're all going to be about radical honesty and emotional transparency. And yes, I will explain what radical honesty means when we come back. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen Frederick Masek, Stephen the Medium, an attorney, and my husband, who is in charge of being my sidekick for a change today. You like that?
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. So, anyways, today's show is an amazing show. It's about unspoken conversations, and that's right. Those are, the kind of conversations that we rarely talk about, that we are afraid to have. But here's the truth: what we don't say often shapes our lives more than what we do say. So today, as I said at the beginning, is about radical honesty, emotional transparency, and giving voice to what's being left unsaid. And if there was nothing off limits, what conversations would you finally have and with whom? That's the question that you want to be asking yourself today. And that applies to all of us, because all of us, there's not one person left behind. We all have those conversations. We all have, the conversations that we are resisting and that we're avoiding, and you know who they are, you know who you should be having them with, and you know why you're resisting the conversation. So anyway, so now radical honesty, because of course Stephen is, he's like, he balances me, and sometimes I come up with language and he's like, well, you're gonna have to explain what that really means. So radical honesty is the practice of telling the truth directly and transparently. No filters, no facades, no manipulation. So this is, it's a courageous act of speaking what's in your heart without sugarcoating, without blame, and without withholding. And it really does invite, radical honesty invites vulnerability. It invites accountability, and it creates that opening for real human connection, because it dismantles the stories we tell ourselves to protect our egos and avoid discomfort. So, Stephen, how did I do?
I think you did very well. A nice explanation.
Exactly. So, let's start. Let's start with this, Stephen. Why do you think unspoken conversations it's an important part for all of us to pay attention to?
Well, I think this is like a subject matter that has one side of the spectrum and the other side of the spectrum. So I think there's times that you're in a situation that you may make a call to not say something because your feeling is it's going to land on the person and make them feel bad or hurt or something like that, right? So, you just, I don't think when you said what you said, it's from my perspective, is like you just can't have that one statement and saying that that's how you have to live, end of story, because I just don't think that's how we live, because there's many times that I'm in a conversation with somebody and, if I feel like something I say may again hurt somebody or just not make them feel good, then I won't, especially if it's something that's not going to affect either one of us, right, in any really major way. So, and then there's the other side of people going the opposite, that don't have those conversations and say nothing. And the worst part of that is it's not helpful to the person you're talking to, but it's also not helpful at all to you, because not saying something, it's sitting somewhere in you. You can't just, like, if you want to say something but you don't because, like you said, you're afraid or you're afraid what's going to happen, whatever the case may be, that doesn't just dissipate or disappear. Like, it sits with you, right? It's in your system, and it's like a fungus, or is it fungi? I think plural. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You may be able to think you're smart enough to, like, say, yeah, I got rid of it, or I'll put it on the shelf, but that's what happens. You put it on the shelf and it does not go away.
No, but I'm glad, Stephen, that you are clarifying because we're not. This is not about you should have no filters, right? Because filters is part of having a high emotional intelligence. Being having self awareness and knowing how to self regulate our emotions. This is not about that. This is about those conversations that have an emotional cost on you. And the only person that gets to decide that would be you. So, I couldn't decide for Steven that he's avoiding a conversation because he has an emotional cost. You get to decide that for yourself. These are the conversations that we also avoid because, you know, it could lead to rejection. It could lead to conflict, by the way. And that is one that I personally relate to a lot. And, Stephen, you've helped me through that many times. Some these conversations often can lead to loss of control and also being misunderstood if you are not prepared to have a conversation and coming from that authentic place. The other thing, Stephen, and I think you highlighted that, and I think it's really important to be clear so that you understand what are the conversations we're talking about here. This is the conversation that if you keep silent, it's gonna breed resentment. In resentment, I often say it's a nasty, nasty poison because resentment it's like you taking poison expecting somebody else to die, but you're taking the poison. So if you are experiencing, hey, I'm withholding something, and the more I keep silence, the more resentful I feel. That is perhaps the kind of conversation that we're talking about, the kind of conversation that you're avoiding, and the kind of conversation that maybe it's going to have a much more significant cost, speaking it than withholding it. And by the way, withholding these conversations, they affect everything that we do. Sometimes, if it's a work related conversation, it affects your leadership. If it's a personal conversation, it can affect your relationships, but it also can affect our health, Stephen. And I think you sort of pointed towards that. It can also affect our self worth, and I think that's why this subject matters. You get what I'm saying, Stephen?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think when one of the lessons I've learned since being on this physical earth is, none of us know the state of mind of somebody else. You can say, oh, I've known this person forever. I pretty much I know what they're thinking. Or sometimes, there's other situations that you may not even know a person very well, but because of the situation, you think in your head, well, there's no other reason why this person would do what they just did. Really saying, I know their state of mind, in which we don't. And ironically, going through law school, that's one of the things. It's a hearsay rule in court, and it's like you don't know the state of someone's mind, right? So you can't do that. And I think once you sort of realize that, that's when you are in the position to make a decision on whether to say something or not say something. And so many times I think we get wrapped up in, we think we absolutely know it all. We know what this person is thinking. So why bother? I already know why they're doing it. And clearly it's because they don't care about this, or they have no feelings, or they just don't, whatever the case. And so you don't say anything. And at the end of the day, you're wrong. You didn't read the state of mind of that person correctly. And maybe sometimes there can be possibilities that you did. But I would think, from my experience, more often than not, you're wrong. There's something else behind it. And the only way to figure that out is to have that conversation with that person. And as you said, Elix, the other part of this is what I've learned is, When you don't and it sits with you, the second you decide not to make that decision, because we're all energy and we're all connected, if say you decide, say a work thing, and you decide I'm not saying something to a peer or so, and somewhere in the future, near future, because if this is already set up, that particular coworker may have some kind of connection that's going to help you, whether you want to leave the company or get promoted or you have a side gig that could come into play if you had a conversation and became resolved whatever was going on. And if you don't, and that starts causing clashes, like, yeah, I'm not saying anything, but you hold that resentment, then all that, the energy, the links all get just completely separated, and it doesn't happen. So it's not just the actual present point or moment, it's so much more than that.
So insightful, Stephen, and so key. Uh, I want to definitely dive deeper into the subject, but I also look at the clock and we need to take another break. So let's take the break, Stephen, and when we come back, we'll gonna deepen our conversation as it relates to really being willing to step into those uncomfortable conversations that you are avoiding, and understand why you're avoiding, and understand why it is important that you actually step into having those conversations. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen the Medium, is also in the house. And today we're talking, this is a great subject because it's a subject that is applicable to all of us, unspoken conversations, the conversations that we're avoiding. And you know you're avoiding them. You know who you should be having these conversations with. Yet you're resisting because of that fear of what may happen, what the impact of having that conversation may have. Stephen, you talked in the previous segment, you talked about how the conversations, when you don't have them, and I'm paraphrasing, Stephen, like you make up stories, right, about what you think, the other person think, or why you think they did whatever they did. And that make me think that from the neuroscience perspective, and I do a lot of work on neuroscience in my business, I think why that matters, Stephen, is because our brain network, it's designed to fill in the blank. So anytime there's unknown, anytime there is silence, the brain automatically fills in the blank. And guess what? It fills in the blank with stories. So, our brain is really good at creating stories, and sometimes very extravagant stories that are designed to validate, they're designed to justify why we shouldn't be having that conversation, or perhaps why we should. What I think it's important, it's also to practice the art of learning to question those stories, learn to question those assumptions, and learn to seek contrary data. I think that would be useful. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Of course.
And I think the other thing I wanted to add is because you brought it up in a previous point, there is a distinction between speaking honestly with care versus being brutally honest without care. And I think that's what you want to avoid. Because even when you sometimes think you're being brutally honest does a service, when you do so without care, it actually hurts you, it hurts the other person. And I personally would say it has the complete opposite effect of having a conversation that could actually restore a relationship, that could restore, your ability to feel good, to feel empowered. What are your thoughts around that, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I always think of it this way. If you have two people, and I think every one of us has experienced this. So you're in a situation and you're in a conversation with somebody, and say, I don't know, say you and two other people are going to go to dinner, two friends. And one of the friends you're already with, and then you're going to go to the restaurant to meet the third friend. And the third friend texts, calls, whatever the case, they can't go. So we've all seen this. So you have one scenario that happens, and your friend that's with you, that's, physically with you, says, I can't believe they're dissing us. They're probably doing this, and then you may just jump in and just it will just be the conversation that's not going to help anything, right? And for the most part, it's going to take up a lot of time and energy on the way to the restaurant. And I can't believe they didn't show up, blah, blah, blah. And why? And I'm sure they're doing this, or, they don't care about this. And then you do the same exact scenario, situation, that same thing happens, and your friend says, it's probably because I know that his or her family is just having a difficult time with this particular person, and I'm sure it may be that's why they're not coming, because they're so tired, because I know they've been wrapped up. And then the other person may say, yeah, that's probably happening. Let's check in with them tomorrow. It's done. And then you go to dinner. So it comes to sort of an analysis of why would one person automatically go to the worst possibility and one go to the empathy side of just being sympathetic. And I'm sure it's not on us. It's probably something to do with them. And I think what you said, Elix, is it's because of the beliefs that we all pick up, and the people that pick up these beliefs that are just damaging to us, that we just think they're real. That's the former, and the ones that are able to address these beliefs and get rid of them and replace them with real things, like things that are really true, is the latter. And then who do you want to be?
I agree. That's a good question. I agree. Stephen, I as I'm listening to you, because, of course, you and I bounced, you know, it's not ideas, but we support each other, right? So when I come to, you've done this for me. I've come to you and say, Stephen, this is my experience. What do you think? What you've always done, which is exactly what you said, is you help me see it from a positive frame. Because when I'm coming to you, asking you, I'm already wrapped up in that negative frame. So I think what one thing that I would invite people, listeners, to do is, ask people to help you in a positive way, not to jump in that groupthink and say, oh yeah, they're nasty, or yeah, they're right, and wrap up in that negative story. What do you think, Steven?
I think that's a great thing, because it comes back down to what you just said, Elix. Like, what scenario would you like to be in more so? I mean,
Yes.
we all have them. We all have those, the friends, acquaintances, family. It doesn't matter. We all have, like, the maybe even if it's a group, a small group, it's one or two people that everybody harps on it. Someone says one negative thing, like, oh, they're doing it because of this, and the others will like, oh, yep, yeah, because I remember
Everyone
last week or
jumps in,
2 weeks
yeah.
ago, it just it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps going and going and going. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're in that place too, from what I've learned from doing a lot of readings and talking to a lot of dead people, is that you drop your frequency so low when that happens. And I guarantee you, when you're in a low frequency, it is not a good place to be. Nothing goes right. It just, let me say it another way. It can go so much better when you're in this high frequency. When you're in that joy and you're in that happiness, it's completely different. And let me tell you too, Elix, when you said about me coming to you and giving that positive piece, for many years, I was the one that coming to you, and as soon as you said something to me way back when, would be like the person, the farmer, hopping
Yes.
on, oh,
Yes.
this, you should get rid of them. They're not good friends, immediately. And it's just, it really is just coming to learning and understanding more so about not being able to read someone's state of mind, and just, if you've got the option to go either positive or negative, regardless of what the result is, why in God's earth wouldn't you go positive? Like, why? Right?
Yes. I totally agree. Stephen, I'm reading a question from John on the live feed, and so I'm curious to hear your feedback on this. He says, I've gotten older and it's easier to have difficult conversations. So, what advice would you give younger people that may be more apprehensive or conflict avoidant? I personally, Stephen, think it's the opposite. I personally think a lot of older people are more reliant on those old paradigms for the same reasons you just said previously. How they grew up, the experiences they had, and on and on and on. I think younger people may have a better tendency. They may not know necessarily the mechanics of how to, uh, the way we're expressing it, but I think they may have better tendencies to be more able to have those conversations. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think John is a representation of where we all strive to be. And I love what he just said, is as he's gotten older, and he obviously is learning and understanding sort of the mechanics and who he is and the people around him and all of that, right? So I love that. And I think that's what we should strive to be. But I also think too that, and I think in the bigger picture, yes, of course, there's a part of this as you get older, because depending on what age you are, older people at some point start feeling like they're invisible. So what they say
Yes.
is not as powerful anymore as somebody younger. Okay, with that said, I understand the age difference, but I think at the core of us is, why do you have a 90-year-old woman who you're like, oh dear Lord, who will just is so in your face and telling you exactly what he or she feels at 90 years old, whereas someone 20 years old who won't say anything will sort of just go inward and not say much of anything. And I think so much of it is what we've been talking about, Elix. It's our experiences and what we pick up as beliefs, and how they sit with us is really going to dictate how we handle people and what we say and what we don't say.
Yeah. And by the way, children learn by watching parents. So as a child, if they've watched you avoid those difficult conversations, then that's what they do because that's their reality. That's what they know to do. So
Elix, not to interrupt you, but I love that you just said that because it's sort of on the lines of when I do readings and whatnot. And I always tell kids that are, when you're younger, you're so much open because you don't have those filters from not just your parents, but the world. But why is it that people will say, teachers or somebody who will say a particular age group, like young kids, oh my God, it's the best because they say whatever they want to say. Well, sure, because they haven't got to those beliefs yet. So there's no more filters, or there's no filters yet.
yes.
So they'll just say whatever they want to say. Like they don't care. They're very honest and they're very open. And then those beliefs start happening in the world and their parents and all of that. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. What also makes sense, Stephen, is we are 15 minutes to the hour. So it is time
already
for another commercial break. This conversation is so awesome. So let's take another commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to continue to deepen our conversation about why the unspoken conversations really do matter. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen the Medium.
And today we are talking about unspoken conversations, the kind of conversations that you've been avoiding, you've been avoiding, you should be having it, yet you're resisting it, you're avoiding them, you don't want to have them because of a number of things, fear, etc. So, but Stephen, before the break, we had a question from John or a comment from John. You wanted to respond to that. Go ahead.
I mean, I did, but there was something else I just wanted to say when John said what he said about as he's gotten older, he feels like and again, I know this is not verbatim, but he feels like he's able to say more things with age and knowledge. And for anybody that feels that way, and again, thank you, John, for saying that, and is John couldn't make that statement unless he recognized the past, the present, and the future, right? Because you can't make that statement. You have to do some kind of comparison of where he was, where he is now, and why it's easier from his perspective to be able to say something. And what that really just tells all of us is that John has done inventory. He's gone into those, whether he knows it or not, and anybody else that says, oh, I feel the same way as John does. You've gone in and you've taken inventory of what should be here internally, those beliefs, and what shouldn't be. So I think that anybody who feels that way, like John or anybody else, I think at some point you just need to stop and just, pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, like for me to be here, it means that I did take the step to go through like where I am, that inventory, and ultimately the end goal of what he said was the subject of this show is that puts John in a better place, or anybody else that says the same thing or agrees with John, to be able to address anybody or say something that maybe prior the person wouldn't have been able to. And that's the whole point of this, right?
It is. And it brings me back, that whole commentary, Stephen, to why self-awareness is so important, because that all points out to self-awareness. And by the way, if you've heard the term emotional intelligence, that's exactly what emotional intelligence is. It's somebody who has, high levels of self-awareness and then high ability to self-regulate. And then you have social awareness, and then you can socially regulate as well. So great point from both of you. The other thing, Stephen, before I want to give our viewers some, ways to perhaps take those steps into having these conversations, but I do want to talk about something. I want your feedback as well. What's the difference, right, between expressing yourself with care, with love, and unloading on someone? What would you say is the difference? Because unloading, it's not going to lead to a conversation that's going to make a difference for either you or the other person. So how do we avoid that, Stephen?
I think looking internally, because I always say, yes, when I teach or do readings or whatever, I always say that what you're seeing through your eyes, like the in front of you, whatever you're seeing, that landscape, that perspective, is all determined by what's going on internally. So if you're unloading on somebody, that just means internally there's a lot of chaos. There's someone's unloading on you internally, and you know who it is? It's you. So that's the reason why somebody would come out and just unload on somebody. And I agree with you, Elix, that's not going to help at all. But the only way you can change that, in obviously the opposite, if you're just doing something in a very compassionate way, well, guess what that means internally? Your internal structure, which is really your soul, it's who you are, is being kind and gentle to yourself, so that when you have that conversation, whether it's easy or hard or not, it's coming from a really a wonderful place, and a place that you think that when you say something, it's going to benefit both parties. But I think the only way to change that is just going internally, like when I talked about doing inventory and just seeing what's in there, because the only way you can unload is because someone's unloading on you. And like I said, it's you doing that to yourself.
Yes. And what I would add about that is also, remember what's the intention here. The intention is to have a conversation so that you can take what you've been withholding, the silence, the feelings, and in take them away from that damage that is causing you, that hurt that is causing you, that hurt that may be causing the other person. So you think about the intention. You want to be careful. You want to have a conversation. If you are willing to have that conversation that you've been withholding, you want to have a conversation that is going to lead to both you and the other person feeling okay. Now we feel complete. Now that doesn't mean you're gonna be best friend. May not be best friends. You may not have the same relationship, but you can both walk away feeling okay. Thank you for saying what you said. Thank you for listening to me. Leaving each other with that experience of being heard. I think that's ultimately what we want. I think unloading is just reckless communication. And when you're reckless communicating, it's only going to lead to more of the same or perhaps even worst of the same.
I completely agree. And I think there's sometimes we've all heard someone say, if you say to someone, why don't you say something? And their response is, listen, it's not going to change anything, right? It's like, why bother? Why bother? And I think in the bigger scheme of the why bothers, just for everyone listening can sort of go, just ride this analogy with me. If you were like at your house and or apartment, it doesn't matter, and you sat down, say your driveway, just let's use that. You sat on your driveway and there's one little domino all attached to other dominoes that are all standing up, and they go through your driveway, and you make a decision, whatever the decision is, and you hit that domino, that one domino, and you think, well, it hits all of them, and you watch them, it's really cool, it goes down the driveway, and that's it, right? But that's it. Because it goes into the street, and then it goes through your city, and then it goes through other towns, it leaves your state, it goes through this entire country, it goes through, like, just imagine the dominoes, and it just goes on the top of the ocean, and it goes into the Caribbean, and then goes to the coast of Africa, and then Europe, and Asia, and Australia. It goes through the entire world. That's with what happens with one thing you say. It doesn't, you can no longer use, why bother? It's not going to change anything, because that's also calling in the state of mind. Like, that, and we're all connected. We're all attached. So that one push it's hitting the entire world, the universe. It's pretty incredible to think about.
I love that. I love that. So, because we only have a few minutes before we complete the show, I want to offer all of you who are listening, all of you who know there are some conversations that I should have, there are some conversations that I've been avoiding, how to go about it, how to take that courageous first step towards having those conversations. So, here's a few things I'm going to invite you to consider. Start with curiosity, not accusation. So what does that mean? Be curious. Don't make assumptions about what you think they felt, why you think they did what they did. Don't make any assumptions. Come into the conversation with a mindset of being curious. Wonder. Ask questions. I often call them questions for which you have no answer. That is not a question. It's not a yes or no, or it's not a question that you're asking because you're convinced you know the answer to. No, it's truly a question for which you have no answer. Come to the conversation from a place of curiosity. You'll be surprised what you learned in the process. Also, and perhaps as importantly, use I statements. I often when you're trying to mend or when you're trying to have a conversation with the intention to clear something that's been bothering you, when you say we, you're including somebody in that we that may or may not be appropriate. They may not feel the way you feel. So only talk about how you feel. I statements, and own your truth. And then, perhaps, as importantly, make the space for their truth. Make the space to listen without judgment. Just really listen. I call that listen to connect. Listen to connect to somebody else's world. It's not listening to understand. It's not listening to judge. It's not listening to verify or validate your point of view, your position. It's simply listening to connect to that to that other person's world. And then the last thing I would say, prepare emotionally. This is not about being perfect. There is no such thing. Conversations are conversations. They're designed to be fluid. So allow for that. Give yourself grace, and and allow for the conversation to just flow however it flows. There's no such thing as the perfect conversation. And if you need to write it, or give yourself some other way to prepare, do so. Prepare, write it ahead of time, practice what it is that you want to say so that you don't miss any points. Anything else, Stephen, that you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think what you said is a perfect way to, you know, go through those tasks or those, the number 4 or 5 things that you just said before you embark on wherever you want to go. But I think it's also, the only thing I would add is just make sure you take into consideration yourself and internally and what's going on inside, which is going to be definitely a big part of what happens when you start verbalizing something.
Beautiful. So, Stephen, let people know where they can find you.
Stephen the Medium on my website and social media.
And you can find me at Coach Helix anywhere on social media. So as we wrapped up, I'm inviting you to consider that radical honesty isn't about being fearless. It's about being real despite of the fear. And freedom doesn't come from holding it all in. It comes from letting it all out with love. So until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in conversation. And we'll be back next week. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
But